We can all tell a good movie scene from a bad movie scene. A good scene can grab our attention, make us feel emotion, make us cheer, and even inspire us to physical response, while a bad movie scene just doesn't. We don't always boo or react physically to a bad scene. Most of the time, we just forget about it as soon as it's over. That's because what usually makes a scene bad isn't that it did something horrible, but that it didn't do anything remarkable. In filmmaking, and especially writing, you want to make sure that your scene is doing something. Driving the plot, showing character development, setting up a conflict, or even redefining the subtext. So, when a scene doesn't have any of these aspects, it's pretty forgettable because it doesn't need to exist. In some ways, this is even worse than a scene that does something egregious because there's some level of entertainment and mockery. To illustrate what we're talking about, let's look at this scene from Amazon's Rings of Power. The setup for the scene is pretty simple. The main character, Galadriel, is training some recruits to head off to war with the orcs, and that's all the setup you really need. Now, I'm going to get this out of the way and say we will not be talking about lore, canon, or what Tolkien would think of this. We're only concerned with screenwriting.
There are many ways to kill an orc. But for you, I will keep it strong and simple. Stab, twist, gut. Come at me. We will see who can score flesh.
So, to start off, we're going to say that her training is pretty basic, to say the least.
The pointy end goes into the other men.
Oh, come on!
There's nothing in her training that actually gives knowledge to her pupils before she starts engaging in battle with them.
Anyone that does, I will promote to lieutenant.
The biggest problem with this scene is that it's set up on a premise that is absolutely preposterous. The challenge is stupid and irresponsible, and makes no sense. The best case scenario is that you injure one of your soldiers, and the worst case scenario is you kill your best warrior in a training incident. There's no logic or reason that the challenge is laid down, or that the commander goes along with it. You could set up Galadriel as a rogue by having her lay down the challenge and her commander trying to walk it back. Or you could create tension by the commander laying it down, and Galadriel having to begrudgingly participate. That would create a conflict. But none of that happens here, because the only intention of the scene is to try and make a character look disingenuously cool. Another problem with this scene is this pause.
I will promote to lieutenant.
There's a full 5-second count before he says what rank he'll be promoting people to. Does this promotion make a difference later in the show? Not especially. But it's added for fake drama. Since this scene has no real stakes, like the live fire training scene from Jarhead, or the relationship building and personal growth like the training scenes in Batman Begins, drama has to be added inauthentically. Now what follows is mostly Galadriel just toying with the recruits, and a few people coming to watch. She does give one piece of fairly decent advice about balance over force, but overall she gives very little practical advice, and mostly just humiliates the recruits.
Never trust brute force to best an orc. It's often easiest to outmaneuver them. Well done, Lieutenant.
And thus the scene ends, only giving us one new bit of information. This one recruit is promoted to lieutenant. Now, is this a main character? No. Does the promotion serve a purpose later in the story? Not really. He bears some messages later on and helps people escape the explosion from the volcano that creates Mordor. He even has a very poignant scene in the second season. But this new promotion doesn't actually make much of a difference in any of those scenarios. He could perform the tasks he does at the same rank he already is. He doesn't need to be promoted. The only reason this scene is here is to remind us that Galadriel is a good fighter, which the show has already done multiple times. Now let's compare this scene to a scene from The Last Samurai. To set up this scene, Tom Cruise's character Nathan Algren has been brought to Japan to modernize the army and help put down the samurai rebellion. There's bad blood between him and his commanding officer, and there's also a lot of suspicion towards the head of the railroad, Amura. The story implying that he would prefer to grow his own wealth rather than consider what's best for his country.
I suppose we should be grateful they're all firing in the same direction.
Couldn't have put it better myself, sir.
Right from the get-go, this scene shows there's a problem. The recruits are not just standing around waiting for instructions. They're actively training and doing a horrible job of it.
Rifle butt. Against his shoulder. Aye. Down the sight. Now slowly. Ute! Well done.
Instead of challenging the soldier to a shootout, Algren helps him find the right way to use his weapon, and shows him that with practice he will improve, inspiring him and the other soldiers to keep trying. This has already accomplished more than the Rings of Power scene.
Nathan! Katsumoto has attacked the railroad at the border of his province.
We cannot govern a country in which we cannot travel freely. He must be stopped now. My railroad is a priority for this country.
They're not ready.
The rebels don't have a single rifle. They're savages with bows and arrows.
Whose sole occupation for the last 1,000 years has been war.
You have superior firepower and a larger force. I am ordering the regiment to move against the rebel Katsumoto. You will track him down and engage him.
Here we get a lot of information. We confirm Omura is more concerned with the railroads than the country. We see the building tension between Algren and his commanding officer, and we now have important stakes introduced. Is the army ready to fight? Also, the pause here is important to note. There's an actual reason for this pause. Algren has to decide what to do next. He needs to think about the information he's received, and decide how best to illustrate that the army is truly in danger if it engages in battle too soon.
Mr. Graham! Tell this man to fire at me!
I beg your pardon?
Tell this man, if he does not shoot me, I will kill him!
Captain, if I might have a word.
Tell him! Tell him! Load!
Here, we have a really important character bit. The character's decisions are not meant to make themselves look cool. They're committed to the purpose of saving the man he's shooting at and the entire army. This act of humiliation is intent on saving life.
Shoot me, damn it. Fire! Fire! Ute! Ute!
And here the scene ends, having driven the plot forward by showing the state of the army, escalating the conflict between the protagonist and the antagonists, showing the character's motivation, and highlighting how Algren doesn't fit in with any of the people he's currently associated with. It also foreshadows many of the different battles that will follow throughout the movie. The contrast of these two scenes shows how important it is to make sure that your plot is planned out before you start writing scenes. It also highlights the mistake of making character-centric scenes at the expense of the plot. The Last Samurai is a great example of a well-written screenplay. It's a solid, consistent story with a logical and continuous plot. Every scene is driven by characters' actions. Their actions drive believable reactions by other characters, and this also drives character growth. And this all comes from a screenwriter who took the time to outline his plot, create his characters, and then refine his work to make sure that it all makes sense and was consistent. This is why the scene from A Last Samurai and the movie as a whole is a great example of film and writing, while Rings of Power, not so much. If you like what you saw and would like to see more videos about filmmaking and screenwriting, like and subscribe to our channel. Also, comment below with scenes you'd like us to talk about in future good versus bad filmmaking videos.